I'm a public relations major. They usually respond by saying, oh, don't PR people just kind of like spin stories and cover things up when companies make mistakes? And then I, try to politely respond by saying, actually, public relations is a strategic communications process where we build mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and their publics. But, it's basically the same thing, right? No, there's a big difference between PR and spin. Is anybody else tracking with me? Have we all kind of tried to have this conversation with people before? Yeah, okay. I know I've had this conversation even with my mom multiple times, and now I'm a senior, and I feel like she still doesn't quite get what PR is and what we do. Then when the person goes on to ask me, well, what do you want to do in PR? Then I respond by saying, I actually would love to go into political public relations and work on political campaigns. And then their reaction amplifies even more so. They're so confused as to why I would want to step into this industry. And you all may remember the name Edward Bernays from our Intro to PR class, and he's kind of dubbed the father of public relations. And back in the 1900s, when he was in the PR industry, it was a lot more of a spin industry, kind of focused around manipulating the public's perception and just putting out a lot of propaganda for organizations. But now PR has grown into so much more than that. And this election season, it seems like whether you are scrolling through your Facebook news feed or you're watching TV, there are just constant allegations in the media against political candidates and with different scandals that they may be involved in. But professionals working in the public relations political world do a lot more than simply crisis communications. Being a light in political communications takes courage and conviction where truth is the ultimate standard. But even beyond the confusion of what PR is in general, there is this misperception about what people who work in political public relations do. And excuse me. PR professionals portrayed on TV shows like Scandal and even House of Cards, they are just covering up mistakes that politicians make. They are hiding politicians' affairs, they're rigging elections, and they even dispose of the occasional dead body. And don't get me wrong, I love these shows. I think they're really fun and entertaining to watch. And Scandal is actually what got me interested in kind of combining the two worlds of politics and public relations. But now that I've been more exposed to this industry, I've realized that there's a lot more than just dressing up and looking great and running in to save the day at the last minute when something goes wrong. And now that we've talked about what it is not, let's take a look at what political PR actually means. So one book defines political public relations as the management process by which a way an organization for political purposes through purposeful communication and action seeks to influence and to establish, build, and maintain beneficial relationships and reputations with its key publics to help support its mission and to achieve its goals. And I'm sure you guys can tell that this definition is a mouthful, but it actually sounds pretty familiar to the definition of PR that I gave earlier. And I am by no means an expert on the issues, and I don't claim to be. I'm not a politician or even a political science major, obviously, but being a person who works in politics but specializes in public relations gives me a unique perspective on lobbying for issues and for candidates. I get to use PR campaigns and come up with creative strategies and tactics as a way to encourage the public to care and be informed about different issues. I also think that this misperception of this industry comes from a lack of true PR professionals that are in the field. Tim Penning is the Associate Director of the School of Communication at Grand Valley State University, and he wrote that a lot of what happens in politics is done by people who are not bona fide public relations professionals. They do not have a degree in public relations, nor are they accredited in public relations, and they are not members of the Public Relations Society of America. If any of these three things were true, they would be more likely to practice PR in according to the mantra of the PRSA Code of Ethics. And you can see here that PRSA it calls its members to adhere to a code of ethics, and that code includes values like advocacy, honesty, expertise, independence, loyalty, and fairness. I think one way that we can bring light into this realm of political public relations is to be upstanding and ethical communicators. I think it's important for people working in political PR to keep this code of ethics in mind because they can face different ethical predicaments on a daily basis. And let's take a look at some of those different ethical issues that can come up. There might be an issue that you disagree with a candidate on, whether that's their economic policies, their views on same-sex marriage, or even their views on immigration. It's really hard to find someone who lines up with your ideals 100% and you agree with them on every single issue. But then if you're working for a candidate who differs from your view on a major political issue, maybe that would be abortion, then it might be unethical for you to continue working for them and to help them get elected into office because they will be advocating for something that you believe is morally wrong. So that's one way that PR professionals might need to be able to check who they're working for. And then on the other hand, if you're working for a communications or issue advocacy firm, you might have a little bit more room and freedom to maybe decline different accounts if things are brought up in issues and projects that you might be able to say, actually, I'm not comfortable working for that issue. And so there's a little bit more freedom to move in that. Last month, I interviewed for 2 different political communications firms, and the first question that both of these places asked me right off the bat was, what is a specific piece of legislation that you are against? What's something that you could not get behind? And then the follow-up question to that was, what are some pieces of legislation and some issues that you are excited about? And what are things that you are passionate and want to work on? And I know that they asked me these 2 questions because they wanted to make sure that I was going to be a good fit for their firm and the work that they're doing. And they also wanted to make sure that there would be things that I would be excited to work for them on. And so now let's take a look at some of the dirty campaign tactics that we've all seen, whether that's through nasty campaign ads that one campaign team puts on TV against their opponent, or if that is rumors that are started or just nasty things that go on during debates. But frankly, I am annoyed at the constant name calling that we have seen between candidates on the campaign trail. This type of dirty campaigning is called mudslinging, and mudslinging is the use of insults and accusations, especially false ones, with the aim of damaging the reputation of your opponent. And Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen." Some people view this type of negative campaigning kind of as you got to do what you got to do to get your candidate in office and kind of winning at all costs. However, I would much rather win the election and be put in office based on knowing that I was the best person for the job or the most qualified, and not because I aired my opponent's dirty laundry on TV or made up false rumors about them. So I don't know about you guys, but that's just the type of campaigning that I would want to be involved in. So with that, I would love to work for candidates with integrity. I want good, solid people to be elected in office because I'm tired of hearing about the politicians who are cutting deals with others to get their legislation passed through, or if they win their elections using those mudslinging tactics we mentioned. And people, and especially my family members, they even ask me, well, where do you plan on finding these upstanding candidates who have all this integrity? Where are they hiding? They sometimes kind of laugh it off and think this aspiration is silly or even a little naive. And maybe they're right. Maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic that I can find these great candidates. But all I can do is work diligently in order to glorify God in this pursuit. I know that I'm called to live out Colossians 3:23 through 24, which says, "Whatever you do, work heartily for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you'll receive your inheritance in heaven, because it's the Lord Christ who you're serving." And as long as I remain faithful on this path to do this work for God, I can be known as a political public relations professional who also happens to be a Christian. And in that, I hope to make an impact in my workplace. But sometimes I do wonder, how successful can I truly be if I'm doing things kind of by the book or being ethical in all of my tactics? But then I remember the story of Katie Watson. And Katie is a Biola alumna who is a journalist in Washington, D.C. And her drive and her passion has been really inspiring to me. She was recently featured in a video for Biola, and she said that she's realized that so-called secular work can be holy when we're doing that work for God. Her hard work has received national attention, and she has a story that she was even interviewed on Fox News about, and she's been very successful so far in her work. She works to honor God in word and in deed. That's something that I really admire and that I also aspire to do. And right now I currently serve as a campaign assistant for a candidate who is running for California State Assembly. And although she isn't an outspoken Christian, I believe that she is an upstanding candidate and still deserves my support. I've viewed my work for her as an act of service. It hasn't been glamorous, or it wasn't really what I thought it would be. It's been I've been doing a lot of administrative tasks for her. But by being committed and being a faithful person who's been working for her, I've been able to show Christ's dedication to her through my actions. There are so many different options that you can pursue when you're in the realm of political public relations. You can work for a politician as a press secretary or as their communications advisors. Press secretaries mainly interact with the media. They draft a lot of press releases that describe their congressman's stance on an upcoming legislation and policy vote. They make statements to journalists, and they also evaluate important issues that are facing their congressman's district that might need to be addressed. You could also run campaigns and get people elected. Being a campaign manager means you're in charge of hiring and supervising and delegating work to an entire campaign staff and volunteers. You research, plan, and implement campaign strategies based on what the polls are saying. You also coordinate your candidate's calendar, and you oversee all of the campaign fundraising, along with all of the marketing, branding, PR, and everything that your campaign puts out. So that's another big job that you can have and something that I would love to do. Another avenue that you could take is to work for an issue advocacy firm, and where you would focus on making changes that are centered around a specific piece of legislation or an issue, and not as much centered around one specific candidate. When you get to invest in an issue that you're passionate about and come up with creative strategies to make your voice heard by the masses. So that's another option as well. But all of these careers have one thing in common, and they all aim to reach this one underlying objective, and that is communicating truth. And just like those of you who are maybe going into journalism or agency or nonprofit PR, I want to communicate truth in the work that I do in this industry. So I see this as a unique way to integrate my faith into building mutually beneficial relationships. As Christians, we follow a God that is truth, and any piece of good work that I do is ultimately a reflection of God's image, because good things only come from Him. Now, this summer, I am headed to Washington, D.C. to intern with a firm called JDA Frontline, and they're a communications, a digital strategy firm, and they do everything from media relations to issue advocacy to digital media planning. And it's a smaller firm with about 10 employees, and the thing that I'm most excited about is the structure of the firm. They have a level of top experienced executives who have all been in the industry for 20 plus years. They've worked for former presidents and have been representatives at the Republican National Committee, just to name a few things. And then directly under those executives is a level of new, younger generation PR professionals, and they all get to work collaboratively to come up with different ways to serve their clients. So I'm really excited for the opportunity to learn from their great minds this summer. And I'm looking at this summer as kind of a trial run to see if I like living and working in Washington, D.C. Who knows, maybe one day I'll end up there working and living there and being a light in politics by communicating my convictions through courage. But until then, I'm going to be content with whatever God has in store for me, even after graduation. So thank you all so much for listening, and I would love to open up the floor to any questions you may have.